Peter, good morning.
Hi.
Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Hi, Brendan. No, thank you. It's a pleasure to talk with you and, if possible, to share some useful insights for someone else.
Absolutely, and you have lots of those. Listen, you're the CEO for TapMyBack. So let's start off there. Do you want to give an overview of TapMyBack and your role within it as well?
Sure. So we are in the business of trying to motivate and engage people in organizations. Typically, employees in a business. Okay, it can also be for non-profit, but typically businesses. So what's this about motivate and engage? So we don't do coaching. We are a platform, a software as a service, and through employee recognition, the so-called tap on somebody's back. You do recognition. So if a colleague helped you, or if someone achieved something important, or just getting a new client, you can tap through our platform, and then you associate that with a badge of the company, and the badges can be, for instance, company values. Okay, so at the same time you are recognizing someone and making that person feeling well, and in the other end, you are trying to align everybody around the goals or values of the company. We have also a lot of clients, normally in US, UK, Australia, English native countries normally, that also connects recognition with rewards. So they use our analytics to pay out rewards to employees. It can be, per tap they get $10, for instance. And then they can redeem in gift cards, or it can be the employee of the month, some kind of thing like that. But we also have other features. So this is the funny and very easy to use feature. But then we also have private feedback, the so-called 360 degrees feedback, where you can give more constructive feedback, for instance, real time. And I didn't talk at the beginning, we also help companies like the HR department or the C-level guys to feel the pulse of their organization using surveys that can be very, very simple, like just feeling the moods of the people. You as an employee, you are on your Slack account or Microsoft Teams account, and then you receive a notification every day just asking you how are you feeling, and you just answer with an emoji. This is pretty simple, but it has a lot of information for the management. So imagine that there was an important notice in the company yesterday or last week. You can see what was the reaction or the changes in the mood of the company, in the mood of the people because of that. Maybe nothing changed, but sometimes it go up or down. So it can influence also the way that you prepare changes in the company, or the way that you address the impacts of a bad news in the company as well. So this is just one of the examples. I don't want to explain all the features, of course, but our business is, to help companies or leaderships to motivate and engage employees, and at the same time try to feel what is the pulse of the organization at a certain period of time.
Yeah, sounds great. It's a relatively young organization, Peter, isn't it? TapMyBack.
That's a good question. Depends on the way that you are looking, because it was founded in 2015, so it's young compared to JP Morgan, I guess, but not that young for a startup. Actually, it's 6 years. It's a long time for a startup, which means also that we are doing something correctly, because we are still alive. That most of the startups don't have this lifespan. So it was created at the early days, even before 2015, as an internal tool of a group, common group, Portuguese agency, creativity and the marketing agency, because the leadership at the time, they felt that they were not recognizing enough their employees. They were growing fast, which is good. But the leadership felt that they needed to do more recognition to their people, and so it went well, and then they started presenting this to some clients as pilots, I believe, because at that time I was not at TapMyBack, and probably we will go there, and then they did the spin-off and created the product and start selling it, of course.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting comparison, isn't it? I mean, you mentioned JP Morgan, right?
Yes.
A established company and a CEO. I mean, what's it like being the CEO of a company, you know, relatively young, let's say, or a startup company? Like, what are the main objectives in your role, and what are the main challenges for a CEO of a company at this stage of its development?
Yeah, at this stage is growth, okay? Because we passed the barrier, which is a important and big barrier of product market fit, meaning, you know, for people that is not familiar with the term, okay, you build something, but are, you know, building people willing to buy that stuff. Actually, the value proposition is there. And if you show that same value proposition to more people, you will have the growth. So yeah, we already proved that we have a lot of different organizations from different countries that pay to have the product. But now we want to have much more of the same type, let's say, of customers around the world. So this is the big challenge. Try to understand what is the type in one and the type of message that will get you the customers that you want, and then what are the channels where you can put that message, and then you can invest 100 and get 500 or even better 1,000, something like that. So for now, this is the biggest challenge. I guess that JP Morgan also wants to grow, but for me, as a CEO of a smaller and younger company, I have to do, you know, I don't go to play golf. I don't know if the guy there does that, probably. I just have, you know, to manage the few resources that we have as a tech company, a small tech company, and try to be very careful about each cent that we pay to try to acquire customers.
Yeah. And for, you know, any listeners that are kind of in university or even late in school, I mean, you're CEO of this youngish company, but you've also started up a couple of companies, and we'll talk about those a little later as well. But what sort of qualities or personality do you think, Vítor, even just to be the CEO that you are today? And you can include your startups as well if you want to now.
Yeah. So you have to have the passion to build things, and, you know, to understand it's not just I have a great idea and this will be perfect. No, it will take a lot of work and sacrifice. And when I say sacrifice, it's like you will be investing your time and not getting that kind of salary in other big corporate that you might get if you go, you know, directly to big corporates after you leave the university. So you have to be aware that you are trying to do a lot with no budget, with a very small team typically. So you have to be prepared to persevere. I think you say that way, maybe
persevere. Yeah.
Yes. You have to be ready for that, because it will be always a long journey. Of course, sometimes you have those incredible startups that in 1 year they raise a lot of money, or they are getting already a lot of customers. It depends on the path that you want for your startup as well. But normally, you know, you have stories like Airbnb that they were struggling for, I don't know, 6 years, 7 years, and it's not only Airbnb. That's a very well-known story, but a lot of startups, you know, it takes a lot before you go in your trip to the moon. Normally, you are just around trying to get customers around your circle, your very, very small circle in Earth, and then you die or you really go up to the moon. But that's the game.
Yes, you have to be comfortable in uncertainty, really, don't you?
Yes, every day, a different number of times during the day. It's really a roller coaster. But in the end, you have to be confident, and you also you need the ability not only to motivate yourself, but also to motivate others. Not lying to others, because sometimes there are some confusion around what is motivation and lying to others. But you know, if you have a clear plan, and the plan changes a lot. Okay, but you always need goals and a plan to achieve what you want. And if it's well prepared and you feel that you did a good job preparing what is the strategy and what should be the goals and the next steps, you should also be able to motivate the co-founders or the employees or whatever that are with you in the team. If not, even if the product can be brilliant, if you don't have this human touch to motivate people that is with you, of course it will not work. And also you have to motivate also somehow the clients or the investors, or depending on the cases. So you also have to have this aura of positivity.
Yeah. No, that's really, really interesting as well. And I mean, I want to talk a little bit about, you know, the startups that you've developed in the past as well. But it'll be interesting just to understand the making of an entrepreneur that you are, and taking it right back. Maybe can you give us a little bit of background on your upbringing and where you grew up, and what your interests were when you were growing up as well?
Okay, so I grew up at the sound of Tagus River, close to Lisbon. So without traffic jam, it will be about 30-40 minutes by car to Lisbon. So it's not that far. With public transportation, it's a little bit more, of course. And I studied economics in university, and then in Lisbon, because it was also close to home, and it was my first choice at the time. So I felt like I always liked the idea of politics and the economic side of politics. So economy was kind of a no-brainer in that sense. But I also liked management and the idea of creating something, which is pretty different, because if you are talking about the economics of a country and the politics, everything is already there. Okay, you can improve and you should improve and reform. But management, of course, you can also go to corporate. But the interesting part for me was more about creating something that could be mine, and then I could grow it. So I don't know.
And where, Vítor?
Yeah.
Sorry, where did that creative element come from? Was there people that you kind of looked up to or were inspired by growing up that gave you that inkling into, I want to get into kind of management or startups?
I don't know exactly where that started. It's very hard. The part of economics and politics, it was because I always felt that our country could do much better with resources that we have, much better, and still today.
Yeah.
Even if we have positive points, and mostly for foreign people. So that part is easy. The economics part is easy. The management, I don't really know. I know that during the university, I had to choose some subjects besides the mandatory ones. And one of those subjects was entrepreneurship, and we had to create a company, a project, startup, whatever you want to call it. We have to create some kind of business at the end of the day, at least in the paper. And my group, we did it in the paper. A kind of the brand was unique. Because it was a cards fidelization card, loyalty cards, instead of you at that time, we are talking about 2008, something like that, instead of having 10 different cards for the brands that you like, you can have just one, and you go store to store or to gas station, and you use the points from that brand, but with just one card. But it was a physical card. Okay, at that time the smartphones were not as good as today as well. But I don't really remember what was the trigger for me to go to that subject. I was already interested before in creating stuff. Maybe stories from Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, were inspiring for sure, and also some Portuguese guys that created big groups, and they come more or less like me. You know, from nothing is a very strong proposition. but you know, my family, we were not rich. So I felt that I had to do something for myself if I wanted to grow and to be one of these guys that created enormous companies.
Yeah. So you had that drive to succeed even from a young age, I guess.
Yes. Also, my parents, well, at that generation, maybe it was the same in your country, I don't know, but from families that didn't have that much money, the goal was like raise the kids and they go to college and take a degree from a university. That was the ultimate goal. But at the same time, and mostly my dad's, that actually it was a father-in-law, sorry. He also, well, his childhood was much more difficult than mine, no comparison at all. And he always passed me the idea that we needed to do stuff for ourselves. Our pet is to us. We have to fight. We have to try to get it. To them, in his case, to buy a home with his own money, to go to Germany and buy the Mercedes that he wanted. You know, this kind of stuff. It was goals for him, and big goals. When he was a child, it was a very difficult path to have that kind of stuff. So this type of spirit of go out there and fight for yourself and get things done, probably it was more linked with him.
Yeah. So when you decided then to do economics in Lisbon as a degree, you went into that in mind of not going for a corporate job as such. You always had it in the back of your mind. You'll do this to get into kind of developing and starting up your own company, or you were on the fence? Yeah,
I were on the fence. Yeah. And I guess that at the time the clear vision was like to get a job after university, to be honest. And that project that I was talking about with you, that unique cards, I think that from the group I was the guy with more appetite to finish the project in the university and then try to make a business of it. But the rest of the group was even more into corporates than us are in that spirit. So the obvious idea at the time was to just finding the best job that you can have after university. And also, I know that at that time when I was finishing my degree, I was involved in a political party. So probably it would be too much to be involved in a small party at the time that was also a new party in Portugal, and at the same time try to create something. I'm glad that I didn't try it, because it would be crazy. Yeah.
So is that party still around that you were involved with? Are you still involved in that? Or?
I guess they still exist, but it didn't went well. I think it's an interesting story, because I was going to the university and I passed it was not an outdoor. It's just that small billboards that you have in electricity posts, I guess. You know, a small billboard, and it said just change Portugal. Let's go change Portugal. And I was like, yeah, I want to change Portugal, but what's this? And then I ended up talking with the president and the founder of the party. And so, yeah, I tried. I was also, not only me, we tried. I was also very young, but then there was so many internal conflicts, human beings being human beings too much, and it didn't work out. Yeah, but it was a good experience.
I was just going to say, you must have learned a lot from that. So you were in the mix there. So you were doing the party. So what happened when you left, when you finished your degree? What was the next step for you?
So at that time, I had two job offers, which was good. Also, it was just right before the subprime crisis, so the market was not that bad at that time. One was for one Portuguese, the public bank in Portugal, to a more commercial role, and the other one was for BNP Paribas in the area of security services. The BNP Paribas, it was a foreign and private company in one hand. In the other hand, and even more important, I knew that if I entered, I would go to Paris or London to have training for in between 3 to 6 months. And so, yeah, that was a nice idea for me.
Sounded good.
Yeah, not only because of money, but also living abroad in very nice cities like London or Paris. And I ended up going to Paris with BNP Paribas for 6 months, and it was an incredible experience, getting to know new people. I have, friends from that time. That is also important. This is not only about business and growth, it's also about having, and maybe even more, having relationships in your life. And so I have very good friends from that time. And after these 6 months in Paris, I went back to Lisbon, and I stayed there in BNP Paribas for more 1 year, I think. So in total, 1 year and a half. And then a lot of stuff was going on in my life, in my personal relationships. Also, my mother started a small business that was not going well at all. I was not happy at BNP Paribas anymore. And also, at that time, my career was like, or the possibilities for my career there was like, okay, you can be then a team leader, then you can be a manager, and then after some years, with a lot of luck, you can be, responsible for one entire department or division, or I don't know, something like that. And that was not exciting for me. I already learned a lot with that experience, but I felt that I would not develop much more there. So, yeah, I quit that job. And also, because I was young and stupid, I thought that it would be very easy to have a wonderful job after that and getting a really exciting job after that. And it was not, actually. The crises were already there. My CV was not as bright as I thought. And so it was a tough time after BNP Paribas, honestly. For 6 months, I don't know if I was depressed, but I was not feeling right. That's for sure.
There was a lot going on. Looking back at that moment now, would you have stayed with BNP Paribas a bit longer?
No,
you wouldn't. You were done with it.
Yes. So it was tough, but part of your biggest learnings in life, are related with tough situations. So you have to have the experience, actually. And I'm happy right now where I am. I have much more to conquer, much more to learn, but I think that I'm in the right path and doing the right stuff after all the mistakes in the past. And that could, maybe it's one of them, not the mistake of resigning, but maybe the way I did it, the timing, and thinking that I was prepared to take, to be the next CEO of JP Morgan right away. It was not the case. But yeah, I don't regret. I had to leave.
You had to leave, yeah. And you mentioned your mother was going through a tough time on a startup she had as well. Interesting, like how did that color your view of starting your own business when you saw that happening? Was it a success at the end?
No,
or
it was
did
not.
That business?
I helped my mother to kill the business. Just,
right.
Just to have, just to stop running out, or to stop losing money, because my mother had the will, and the business was around elderly people, and she's a vocation. Is that an English word as well?
Yeah.
Okay. She had the vocation of treating elderly people, and also that kind of more human related services. But then on the business side, she had no experience. And so that's why, but the learnings were more associated with planning before you try to have your own business. Plan it a little bit. Of course, do not do an entire business plan for a startup. I'm not saying that. Please don't do that. For startup, the first step is, talking with people and trying to understand if you can have really a business, if you will have customers or not. Talk and learn and iterate. But for a more regular business, and that was the case, you have to plan very well how would be the first 6 months if you have 0 clients, because it can happen. Yeah. Will you survive or not? Because in that case, it was a more stable business, a well-known business model, and we knew that there were demands in the country. But even though you have to plan, you have to be ready. So for a more traditional business, I think the biggest takeaway is you have to have some money to be alive for some time without the customers that you think that you can get, and you will always have also some surprises in the process, and there were some surprises. So be prepared and have some cash aside if you want to do a traditional business for yourself.
Yeah, it's almost, I think you said it to me before offline, it's almost tempering the excitement of what your vision and trying to think what can go wrong, and maybe focusing on that very, very early, and to kind of sidetrack.
And it's the Murphy law at the same time, always.
Always, yeah. And so, I mean, when did you start your first startup? Was it closely after leaving BNP that you decided to do your first one, or what happened next?
Yeah, so after leaving BNP I was also finishing a post-degree in finance, and then I was without job or without doing nothing for almost half a year. And then I got a job in a Portuguese consultancy company. At the beginning, it was my tasks were just associated with filling spreadsheets and stuff like that. I was not really doing consultancy. Helping, working with European grants and stuff like that. But then there was an opportunity to change department to the quality systems department to implement ISO 9001 and other kind of certifications in customers. And the most interesting part there, it was that it allowed me to go again abroad, in this case to Angola. In Africa, and it was a very good experience. And the big driver at the beginning was, getting more money and going abroad and working there. It would allow me to get it. But at the end, it was a very good experience because as a consultant in management systems and quality management systems and other type of norms as well, I get to know a lot of different people, both in Portugal and also in Angola, because half of the time I was in Portugal and half of the time I was in Angola. Very different industries, different people, and so I get to know also a lot of different tools, of management tools, the way that managers in those companies and founders in those companies thought about the business, because I had to interview them and sometimes to audit as well. So it was a fantastic experience in that sense as well, I did that for more or less, I think, three years and a half, something like that. And after, I had the money to roast again all of the money in a startup. That was what I did. A lot of mistakes, and so I took my entire savings, both to invest in a startup and both to stay alive and pay the bills, because then I resigned from that company and I created my first startup.
And can you talk a little bit about that decision? Because that consultancy role you talked through there sounds incredibly interesting, right? You learned a lot from it. You were getting to travel over and back to Angola. And it comes back to, I suppose, the conversation we had a little bit earlier about the drive to start your own business. Having gone through that cut with BNP, and maybe, as you said, you got yourself into a sticky situation. how did you come to the point where you had this good job and you decided I'm going to cut again and start my own business? Can you talk through what you were thinking at the time?
Yeah, it's good that you ask, because I was jumping a part of the history. So when I was in that Portuguese consultancy, I got an offer from another company in Angola. Okay, and so it was, the salary was higher. It was a more interesting financial situation and offering. So I accepted that offer. The thing is, there were some problems with the visa. It was taking too long, and at the same time, oil crisis. And oil crisis in countries like Angola, it's a big problem.
Big one.
I think that my salary would be paid in the local currency, kwanzas. And so I started thinking about my decision, because in that case I would live in Angola. It was not like half of time in Portugal and half of time in Angola. It was also important decision for my personal life. And so after some time with the problems with the visa and with the crisis seeming to be a very serious, and it was a very serious crisis for that country and other oil producers, I ended up not going to Angola and to that position. So lucky me that my previous boss accepted to have me back, which is interesting, an interesting story as well, or interesting position from him. Of course, in this case, and also with the learnings from my previous resignation in BNP Paribas, I finished the relation in a different way, in a more diplomatic way, but also I knew that I learned a lot there, and I had to be grateful to the business owner of that consultancy company. So the relationship was good, and I was happy with them, and they were happy with me when I was there. So I think it was normal to get back for a while. But in that period of transition, because that was not from one day to another, I don't go anymore to Angola, and so I can go back to the previous company. I started to think about, okay, I have some savings. I always liked the idea of creating something. So I started to be more aware of Shark Tank episodes and Googling more about the topic. And that situation was the trigger for me to start my own business, or to found a startup.
Yeah. And so talk us through that experience. What's it like to start your own company?
Yeah, looking back now, so many mistakes that I don't have the time here to explain all of them. But at the beginning, I knew that I did a survey, online survey, that I shared with my people around me, friends, family, etc. And I get positive answers around what I wanted to create. That was, a service, a pickup and delivery service for car maintenance, basically. Now I know that survey was already pointing people to the answers that I wanted to get. It was not the smart. You can still do surveys, okay, but I think that the power of interviews, of talking with people, it's much higher. You have less answers, but the quality of the answers cannot be compared, for sure, and the way that you ask the questions, of course. So I was getting positive answers in that sense, and so I started with the business plan. After that, trying to understand what could be the investment, what could be the growth, what resources we would need, and I started that planning part. Again, a mistake at that stage. You will need planning and business planning, or the way you want to call it, but not in the early days, in the very beginning. Again, understanding what people really need, and if they are willing to pay for it, for it is the most important thing, and then try to come up with a prototype or something that can mimic the product that you may or service that you may build. And at the time as well, I had a friend from the university that he was working in a family business, so he already had some management experience, and so we ended up being partners in that startup. And then I also understood that 50-50 partnerships are very unique things. It's very handled to manage decisions with 50-50. And in the other end, we wanted to build, at the end of the day, we wanted to build a technological product. And we were two business guys. So another problem. We needed, maybe we can have two business guys, but at least one tech guy was needed in the team. But yeah, we launched the company after we saw that we could sell the service even with just a landing page and then doing everything manually behind it. We launched the company without having, I think, the tech guys in place. Or if we had, no line of code was done by the time that we founded, that we created the business or opened the company legally. And yeah, this was back in 2016, I guess. Of course, some months before, I was already doing the surveys. And when we opened the company, I already had again resigned from the consultancy company. So the second time.
You'd made the jump. And
yes,
what was that company, Vítor? What was the concept?
So at the end, after some iteration, it was a car maintenance marketplace. It was, and actually it is, because legally it's not the same company, but the business is still out there. But it was a car maintenance marketplace. The main value propositions is for the car owners, because as a marketplace you have to have different value propositions for the sellers and for the buyers. But for the car owners, it was to have transparency about choosing the right repair shop to you, with instant quotes for car maintenance. Okay, the calculation was done through the plate number and the service that you input in the platform, and then the option of car collection and delivery. Because this was related a lot with my pain. When I was a consultant, I didn't have the time to manage stuff regarding my car. So I just wanted that someone could take my car, do the job, and then get the car back to me. So those were the main value propositions for the car owners. And I think that was not, that is still valid today as a value prop. But for the sellers, the repair shops, I thought it was obvious. It was obvious for me that we are just taking more business to you. So this is good, right? But at the end of the day, they still don't care that much about marketing or trying to get new customers, because they already have a lot of customers. At least for the how can I say it? For the garage, the repair shop that they already have, and the mechanics that they have enough clients to pay the bills and to take some profit. So the motivation to be in a marketplace was not so big as I wanted or as I imagined.
Yeah, and when we first met, actually, a number of years ago, you were heavily involved in that. And I remember thinking it was a fantastic idea. And as you say, it was more about you were creating something for the end user, like ourselves as car owners, whereas the people that you would need to rely on for that business success didn't really have that focus or didn't need to have it. And it goes back to something you said earlier about startups as well. You can have an amazing idea, but it's all about timing as well, isn't it? It's being there at the right time and having the right support and the right engagement.
Yes, of course. There are also several studies about what are the key factors for successful startups. But if I was an investor, and I'm not still, well, I am in crowdfunding, but it's different. I think the most important thing is really the team. It's the team. It's the guys there. it's the human touch, the brains that you have behind the idea, and then the prototype, and then the MVP, and then the real business. Of course, then timing can play a role, and connections, and the investors or the mentors or the people that you have around you helping you. But I think that team, with or without timing, in a crisis, in economic environment, or in a growing stage of a country, I think it's about the team, because sometimes you start with an idea, but then the team can transform that idea and the barriers and the feedback that they get in something different, and then they can succeed with a different product or service or whatever. So I think always the key factor will be always the human touch behind the company.
Yeah, that's really interesting insight. And you talked a little bit about circling the Earth, and then companies that actually get to leave orbit and go to the moon. And we, as we all know, most companies will fail. The majority of startups will fail. So it's really about aligning all those things, isn't it? The companies that go to the moon, everything aligns in a moment, and a lot of luck. Would you say there's a lot of luck involved in success as well?
I don't really like that word, to be honest. I know that, it's more about timing. I think we can replace luck with timing, because it's that timing that make you talk with that person. If you were like 5 minutes late, you cannot get that person. So you can call it luck, but I think at the end of the day is timing, and how things really work. And just another thing, maybe, so we were talking, and I introduced this idea of going to the moon or die. But you have some companies that don't really go to the moon, like Tesla, but they have a good business here down in Earth. They go from one country to another, or to getting more customers. So when we think about startups, we always have that idea, and also the media as well, I think, of getting a lot of investment and going from round to round. But maybe you don't want that for you, and that's perfectly fine. If you just need to find a path to grow and to have profits, right? Aligned with the goals that you want. So it doesn't have necessarily with rounds of investment.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And just to finish up, Vítor, this has been really interesting conversation, and I've learned a lot from it. If you could go back to the Lisbon School of Economics, I think that's where you did your degree, and have a coffee with yourself back then, what 2 or 3 things, pieces of advice would you give the younger Vítor, knowing what you do now?
Yes, tough question. I think that the advice would be related probably with creating a company or a startup, and probably one of the things that's, it was part of the process, but I think I took too much time to learn about, was validating very well what you are trying to create before you creating a company, for sure. Because money is important. It's not everything is in life, but you need money, so don't burn it. I think that the first that comes to my mind, it would be related to that. If you want to create something, Vítor, please validate very well beforehand, and learn about how to make good questions, how to make interviews, and then how to read the data correctly. That would be one. The second or the third one, it's very tough, because even with a lot of mistakes, I'm proud is a strong and maybe arrogant word in this case, but I'm happy with the path that I took, with a lot of mistakes, a lot of downs, but I think it's a growing trajectory. So I can regret some of the stuff that I did, but it was part of the process. And if I change that, what could happen nowadays? So I don't really know. I think the biggest one would be regarding validating before putting all the effort and all the money in that. Other one would be, and as I mentioned before, if you are creating a new business, don't go for 50-50, because it's not only about who is your partner, it's just because it's a complicated situation when you want to take difficult decisions. So don't do that. The third one thing that I didn't do, and even if I liked a lot the experience with the post degree, also in the same university, it was much better learning experience than the degree itself. But I think that would be good to challenge myself and go to another university, another country, to do that post degree or masters or whatever. That for a son of mine, I would say that even if it was a very good experience, and I also have very good friends from the post degree. So yeah, probably these would be the three main ones, at least the ones that I can remember right now or think about.
No, very good, Vítor. It's lovely talking to you as always. I really appreciate you doing this, and I wish you all the best of luck personally, but also in TapMyBack.
Thank you
as well for the future.
Thank you, Brandon, and you are too kind and too nice. But I hope that for someone out there, this can also be useful, of course.
For sure, it will be. Thanks, Vítor, and thanks everybody. Bye bye.